Hello, everybody. This is Shraddha Phadtare from University Living, and I'm here today to introduce you to accommodations in Ireland. I believe some of you are enrolled. I believe some of you are in the process of enrolling. However, I'm here to discuss with you the basics of accommodations in Ireland. So, here we go. So we are a global provider for and a globally managed marketplace for student accommodation in Ireland with about 4,500 verified properties across several international cities. Some of the countries that we cater to are UK, Ireland, USA, Europe, Australia, Singapore, and UAE. We have a 24/7 support team in four different continents, and we're known for having accommodated thousands and thousands of students across the globe with their accommodation requirements, along with a couple of other value added services as well. I would like to move on to the types of accommodations that we have in Ireland. So, we have the general category of accommodation, which is basically the purposely built student accommodation. This is typically providers and properties that allow students to apply from different cities, from different countries for student based accommodation, where only students are allowed to stay. These are fully furnished accommodations designed primarily for students with all the amenities and utilities provided by the property. These are usually very, very near to the universities and very easy to commute as well. All the utilities are included in the rents quoted by these properties that include the gas bill, the water bill, the electricity bill, Wi Fi, heating, almost everything except for food requirements. These are absolutely student friendly and have several other amenities available to the students. There's the various cultural bonding activities and networking events that happen within the property that the student has access to. The fixed tenancy criterias as per the semester intakes, which basically means that the tenancy contracts and the rents are different season wise. There are customized apartment accommodations as well, which we call HMOs. These are private accommodations managed by landlords. These are accessible to students as well as in situations where there are families or working professionals or even students with spouses. These are fully furnished or semi or non furnished apartments, depending on the availability of the students. Bills may or may not be covered in these accommodation, and the same will be communicated to the students as well prior to the booking. There are flexible tenancy options, which basically means that there are short term options and there are long term options as well. The third type of accommodation available to students going to Ireland is also homestays. Homestays Homestay is a similar concept to that of a bed and breakfast. Guests are either accommodated in the family home or in separate quarters nearby. A homestay usually only has a few rooms. The family who resides there runs it. So the students basically share a homestay with families with either a separate quarter for them or a separate bedroom. This guarantees that guests receive plenty of individual attention. You can spend as little or as much time with the host family as you like. So there's a lot of flexibility in terms of homestays as well, which the student can avail. The number of beds we have in Ireland at the moment, city wise, are we have about 4,500 in Dublin, which is the largest amongst all the cities, which also means that we have multiple options available to students for accommodation in the city of Dublin. We have about 250 in Cork, 200 in Galway, 175 in Limerick, and 50 in Maynooth. The different types of rooms that the student can choose between are en suites and non en suites. So there are shared apartments and there are apartments that are more private in terms of the sharing of bedrooms or bathroom or the remaining apartment as well, which will be shared with the student prior to the booking. These are some of the rates for the different cities and that the student is studying in, depending on the university that one has applied to. So, depending on which city you're going to, the rates will differ. Depending on which area you plan to live in, the rates will differ. Depending on what time you apply for accommodation during the year, the rates will differ. We provide accommodation services. Our core accommodation. We also provide room replacements, but also room essentials. When I say room essentials, you basic room essentials, like there will be a mattress provided to the student, there will be a study desk, cupboards, basic kitchen utilities, amenities that are part of your tenancy and your accommodation. However, we also have room essentials that are not provided by the provider but provided by us. We have a guarantor service in the case of students who are where applying to properties where they ask you for a guarantor in case of installment options. And then the last thing that we provide are bank account, and we also provide services with SIM card and Forex cards as well. We're highly trusted by our partners and have a high trust score. These are some of our, this is our coverage and some of our associations. Where you can find us, we have offices in India. We have an office in London as well as in Australia, Melbourne. We will be taking questions. However, I do want to sort of put some light on the process of booking as well. Some of the highlights being the earlier you apply for accommodation in the year, the more options you have to choose from. The earlier you apply for accommodation during the year, the more moderately priced options you get to choose from. So we do suggest that one applies for accommodation as early as possible, as soon as you have your unconditional offer, to ensure good options, but also to get very, very moderately priced options in accommodations. There are two types, of course. There are student accommodations as well as private accommodations. We have two teams to deal with both. However, depending on your situation and when you're applying during the year, options will be provided for both. Ireland is a very, very popular destination for students to apply in, and hence, the closer you are to the intake, the availability of accommodation options definitely goes down and the demand goes up. So, we do recommend that you do start looking at accommodation and get in touch with us as soon as you have clarity with the kind of offer that you have, as soon as you have clarity with which city you eventually plan to study in. That gives us more clarity around the fact, or helps us curate a list of options based on your requirements and your specifications as well. I will be taking questions at the end of this session. However, do feel free to clarify anything and everything you want. I will be sharing my email address as well. Do feel free to write to us in case you have any specific questions around accommodation, and we'd be happy to assist you with these answers. Thank you, everyone. I will be taking questions. We have a chat box. Please feel free to ask any questions around accommodation, and I'm happy to answer. Thank you. I do have a few questions in the chat box. What are studio apartments? So, to help you understand the different room types, studio apartments are basically sole apartments where you do not share the bedroom or the bathroom or the kitchen with any other student. These are more private in terms of the space, and so you pretty much bear the rent as well as the bills for studio apartments. So there will be a bedroom, there will be an attached bathroom, and there will be an attached kitchen as well, which you will not share with any other students. En suites, on the other hand, are 4 bedroom, 5 bedroom, 6 bedroom apartments where you have your own private bedroom and a bathroom attached. However, you will share the kitchen and the living room with other students sharing the apartment with you. So these are en suites. Non en suites are basically part of the room type where you will have your own private bedroom. However, you will have to share the bedroom, the bathroom and the kitchen and the living room with other students. So the only thing you have private in a non-ensuite is your bedroom. Ensuite, on the other hand, is the bedroom as well as the bathroom. So I hope that answers your question. Apartments are sole apartments which you do not share with any other student. Do you guys divide the students depending on courses or just random? No, we do not divide the students depending on the courses they are applying to, or we. It's basically the student's requirement. There are three different types of accommodations that students can look at when they are studying abroad. Okay, one is the university accommodation. Of course, you always have the option to choose the or apply to the university accommodation. We do not help you with that because every university has a separate department that for accommodation that looks into your accommodation queries. So these are most times these are in campus accommodations, which basically means that the accommodation building is a part of the campus. We deal with off campus student accommodation. So, say for example, you do not want to live in the campus, or say for example, you receive an offer from the university for a particular accommodation that you don't particularly like. So, in such cases, one can always look at off campus student accommodations. These are not very different from university accommodations. The only difference is that these may not be in the university. These will be off the university. So this could be anywhere, maybe 10 minutes distance from your university or 5 minutes walking from your university, depending on your requirements. Now, another thing I want to share is the closer your accommodation is to your university, the more expensive it will be. The If you're open to commute a little, say the university is say about 20 minutes walking from your the accommodation is about 20 minutes walking from your campus, or the accommodation is about a 15-20 minutes bus ride from your campus, these accommodations will probably be cheaper in rent than the accommodations that are closest to the campus. So that's how the rents differ. Will it be cost effective to stay in Dublin as a group? Example, 10 students together coming from India booking a whole house. Yes, that's always an option that a student has, where if you have a group of say 5 students or 6 students, you all can share an apartment, you all can share a private apartment where each student gets their own bedroom, or you have the option of sharing your bedroom as well, where the rent will be split into half. Say, to give you an example, say there are 2 students sharing one bedroom, and the rent per student for that particular apartment is say about 800 euros for the month. That 800 will be split between both the students, and each student will have to pay 400 euros against rent. However, bills are never included in a private accommodation. So if you're looking for a for a private accommodation which is landlord managed, the bills are never included in the rent, and they will be shared with you at the end of each month. So yes, you do have an option of sharing an apartment, but it also depends on how big the apartment is. Say for example, if there are 10 students, one needs to look at either a 5 bedroom or a 6 bedroom apartment to be able to accommodate 10 students in one apartment. How do students commute from hostel to school for international students? Well, that's totally up to you. There are buses, okay? There are trains. Okay, students do get certain discounts from the university for commute and for other needs, and one can always use the student card to get discounts on a train ride or a bus ride or a pass, and students can definitely avail these discounts. But the two most common ways to commute, one is a bus, and one is of course one can always commute by train. Students who look at accommodations that are walking distance can also walk it up to the accommodation, of course. But if there's a particular accommodation which is walking distance from the campus, the rent will be slightly higher compared to something that's slightly far. What are the documents we would need to book an apartment? You do not need any documents to book an apartment. All the team will ask from you is clarity around which room type you want to go ahead and book, and also some details around how do you plan to pay installments. For example, some properties allows you to pay the rent in installments. However, some properties may ask you to pay the rent in full. So depending on the property's requirement, these details will be asked from you during booking. However, the only other steps that one needs to follow before booking are: one, once you receive an offer, one has to accept the tenancy contract shared with you by the provider. This tenancy could be short term, it could be long term, depending on what kind of tenancy you have opted for. And the second thing is, most properties will ask you to pay a tiny deposit to book your place on a room. This is very similar to how, when you apply for a university and you receive an offer, the university asks you to pay a certain deposit to secure your place on the course. Similarly, the accommodation provider will also ask you to pay a certain deposit to secure your room in that particular apartment or that particular property. So these are the only formalities that need to be done before you go ahead with booking a particular apartment or a provider. I hope that answers your question. How many students can share rooms? Well, only 2 students can share one bedroom. According to the property's norms. However, there are apartments or dormitories where more than 2 students can share, but these are a different types of accommodation. A normal accommodation, or an off-campus student accommodation, or a private accommodation, or a university accommodation will not allow more than 2 students to share a room. Can I see your presentation again? Is it available online? I missed it. I'm sorry you missed it, but I will share a more filtered version of this presentation with the team at Education in Ireland, and they would be happy to share the same with you on email. I would request you, I'm sure you have, the team has your email address, and I will request the email address from the team and definitely share the presentation with you, Sumit. Are the rates weekly or monthly? The rates that will be shared with you will be weekly. Why are these rates shared weekly? Because tenancy contracts are weekly. For example, the property will share with you tenancy contracts for 36 weeks, 42 weeks, 51 weeks. How are these calculated? 42 weeks is primarily, typically 9 months. 51 weeks is typically 1 year. So if you're looking for an accommodation for the entire duration of your course, it will be 51 weeks. If you're looking for accommodation, was because you're not sure if you will be staying at the accommodation for the remaining 3 months, because it could be summer break, it could be the break at the end of your term. And if you do not have clarity with whether you will be staying in the accommodation, or would you be coming back to your home country, would you be traveling around that time, would you be applying for an internship, depending on your plans, you can choose a tenancy. And so the rate suggested to you will always be weekly. I think I've answered. Okay. And more questions. How is safety if you decide to walk to school? Well, I think it all depends on which area your accommodation is. We do not suggest any accommodations that are not in safe areas. Of course, there are good people, bad people everywhere, in every city, in every country. I think one just needs to be cautious. One just needs to be more aware of their surroundings, no matter what time of the day, what hour of the day you're traveling or walking back to your apartment or walking to the campus. But most of our accommodations are located in extremely safe areas. The entrances are always on the main road to ensure that one doesn't have to enter the by lanes or the accommodation. So it's extremely safe. All cities in Ireland is a very safe place to be in. However, like I mentioned, that there are good people, bad people everywhere. One just needs to be more responsible, more cautious, and more aware of their surroundings. Okay. Do we have to pay 6 months rent in advance and agent charges? No. You do not pay any agent charges. Our services are absolutely free for Ireland, and You need not pay 6 months rent in advance. As I mentioned, that depending on your situation and depending on whether you have a guarantor or you have someone as a backup, you do get to pay in installments. These installments could be quarterly or monthly, depending on your nationality and the kind of tenancy that you have chosen. Do we need a guarantor for getting accommodation? And when is the perfect time to book the accommodation after visa? Well, some properties ask you for a guarantor if you wish to pay in installments. Some properties do not ask you for a guarantor. So when someone on the team connects with you for your accommodation related queries, do mention to them mention to them whether you have a guarantor in that particular country or not. A guarantor, for the others who do not know who a guarantor is typically a person who is a citizen of the country and above the age of 18 and is a working individual in Ireland. Okay. Some providers do ask you for a guarantor in a case where you wish to pay in installments, and this guarantor will be someone who will be signing the tenancy contract along with you. So if you fail to pay your installments, the guarantor is the person who the property will get in touch with. This guarantor can be anybody. It could be your relative, it could be a friend, it could be a distant, it could be a family friend, it could be anybody who fulfills all the criterias. Can we book it from India? Absolutely. You can book it from anywhere. Okay, as I mentioned, that for you, the only criteria for you to book it is to, one, finalize which property you want to go ahead and book, and accordingly pay the deposit requested by the provider. Once you have paid the deposit, your accommodation is temporarily booked, okay, for a certain period of time. However, before you leave for the course, before you leave the country, the provider will definitely request you to pay the first installment of your rent, post which your accommodation is finally completely booked. Okay, so for you to complete the accommodation requirements, one does need to pay the deposit to secure your room for a particular, for a temporary period of time. However, one has to pay the first installment before you leave the country, before you check into the accommodation that you have booked, without which the provider may and can refuse to let you check in. So you can book it from India. All you need to do is get in touch with someone from our team, and they will share the available options with you based on the criterias or specifications mentioned by you, and give you all the information around these properties, and eventually help you book yourself on one of the, in one of the apartments or providers that you've chosen. Things to be aware of when you're looking for accommodation. Thank you for this question. It's a very, very good question. Some of the things that one should absolutely check before going ahead and booking yourself on an accommodation is, one, the safety of the provider, the safety provided by the accommodation. Okay, whether the accommodation is in a safe area or not. Two, the distance. Some students are okay with the commute for several reasons, whether it's a budget constraint, whether a student is open to commute or not. But the distance is important, because eventually during the course your academics can get extremely stressful. Okay, you will be spending a lot of time in the campus, and so you wouldn't want all that back and forth and all that commute every day. So definitely ensure that you're sure about the commute, you're sure about the distance that you're comfortable with between the campus and the provider. One of the other thing that one definitely needs to sort of clarify before going ahead and booking an accommodation is whether you get to pay in installments or not. Because if you're not comfortable paying the whole rent together, it could cause a problem, because once you check in, the provider may request you for the entire rent in one go. So definitely check with the provider if you're allowed to pay the rent in installments or not. So these are definitely some of the things that one should check. But to start with, definitely the safety of the area. Of course, as I mentioned, that we do not suggest any providers or accommodations that are not in safe areas. However, I do normally recommend that you continue doing your own research. There's a lot of information available online, which can end up confusing you sometimes, but sometimes can be relevant too and help you in the decision-making process as well. Can I see your? Okay, is it already? Of course it is. Do we need a guarantor? Do we? Okay. Documents needed for booking an accommodation. As I've already answered this question, you do not need any documents. You just need to pay the deposit and and ensure that you pay the first installment before you leave the country. Can we book the room after visa approval? I wouldn't suggest you do that. For the closer you are to the intake, the more expensive properties are. So, safe to give you an example, if a property is available at 180 euros per week in the month of June for the September intake, the same property may increase its rent to 250 euros closer to the intake, which is possibly in the month of August. So if you're flying out in September and your course starts in September, we do recommend that you start, if you have your offer letter in hand, of course, we do recommend that you start looking at properties much before you apply for your visa. Now, how you're able to do that is every property has a no visa, no pay policy, which basically means that if you do not receive your visa, okay, or if you receive a visa refusal or a rejection, the property will refund any amount that you have paid to the property prior to booking. So one need not worry that if I pay the deposit and if I don't get my visa, will I get this deposit refunded? You absolutely will. So I do not recommend that you wait till you receive the visa, or I do not recommend that you wait to apply for your visa before you start looking at accommodation, because the rent will probably be 30 to 40% more than it would be 3 months or 4 months prior to your start date. I'm going to take a couple of questions more. However, any questions that I have not answered, I apologize, but I will definitely be answering your questions on email. So I'm going to take a couple of more questions. Can we please get some photographs of the accommodations? Absolutely. So when my team shares these links with you, shares the links to some of these properties with you, it will include the photographs to the property of the property. It will tell you about the amenities provided by the property. It will tell you what the rent is, what the installment plan is, whether there's a laundry room, there's a game room, there's a study room. It will tell you, it will give you as much clarity as you need. Can I get your email address to get the presentation and the name of your company? Absolutely, yes. Can we pay rent weekly or monthly? No. As I mentioned, that some accommodations will allow you to pay the rent monthly. However, most accommodations will request you to pay the rent quarterly. So 3 months rent together, 3 months rent together. Will the agency does this accommodation process for us for the first time when we reach Ireland, or we need to find accommodation on our own? No, we will be helping you out with the entire process of, looking at a list of options that you're, not only eligible to apply to, but also options that are maybe close to your university, maybe fit your requirements and specifications. The team will also help you out with the entire booking process. So one need not worry about going to several websites, getting this information, because all of this information can be extremely confusing, sometimes even misleading. So the team will definitely help you with these. Photographs. Okay. What is the organization's name? The organization's name is University Living. We do have a website, so feel free to log into www.universityliving.com. And how do we get in touch? Education in Ireland team will share with you our details, and you can write to us. You can write directly to me. I'd be happy to assist you with any other questions that you may have missed asking. We're in search for an accommodation in Galway as a couple. What sort of accommodation would you suggest? I would suggest that you look at private accommodation, which allows spouses and dependents to stay. Okay. I'm going to quickly share my email address. Feel free to write to me. I'm also going to share with you the name of the organization for you to find us on the internet. Okay. This is my email address and this is the name of the organization. Unfortunately, I have to conclude the session. For today, I'd like to thank each one of you for attending this session, for taking out the time to do this. I hope I was able to answer some of the questions. However, as I mentioned, that I'm more than happy to answer the remaining questions on email. The team at Education in Ireland will help me out with your email addresses and with your questions as well. So thank you, everybody. Patient, but and also have an amazing weekend. Thank you.
Okay, great.